Hello and welcome to Love British English. Today we're going to learn how to correctly pronounce verbs that end in an ed sound. This is very tricky for a lot of students, but don't worry, it all depends on the sound that comes before the ed. All you have to do is remember 3 simple rules and practice. That's it. So, if you're ready, let's get started. Depending on the sound that comes before the ed itself can be pronounced in 3 different ways. For example, t as in talked, d as in claimed, and id as in reacted. But why is this? Let's go through it and see. The rule is, if the verb ends in a voiceless sound except t, the ed is pronounced as t. Voiceless sounds are sounds where your vocal cords do not vibrate. For example, p as in jump, k as in talk, as in laugh, s as in kiss, sh as in wash, ch as in watch. Now let's add an ed to the end of these verbs and pronounce the ed as a t sound. Number 1, jump becomes jumped, jumped. I'm going to over-exaggerate a little bit, okay? Talk becomes talked, talked. Laugh becomes laughed, laughed. Kiss becomes kissed, kissed. Wash becomes washed, washed. And watch becomes watched, watched. So remember, the rule is, if the verb ends in a voiceless sound, okay, we're not looking at the letters here, we're just thinking about the sound. If the last sound is voiceless, the ed becomes a t sound. Now let's move on to the second sound, the ed pronounced as d. The rule here is, if the verb ends in a voiced sound except the sound d, then the ed is pronounced as d. It sounds complicated, but I'll give you some examples. Voiced sounds are sounds where your vocal cords vibrate. So, in the previous example, we had a voiceless sound. For example, s, no vibration. If we do the z sound, we have a slight vibration in our vocal cords. So now I'm going to go through some voiced sounds to give you some examples. First, we have stab, stab. The word stab ends in a voiced b sound. Stab becomes stabbed, stabbed. Next, we have judge, judge. J sound becomes judged, judged. Then beg, beg. G, g becomes begged, begged. Then we have love, love. V, v becomes loved, loved. Followed by climb, climb. The last sound here is Climb becomes climbed, climbed. Then we have clean, clean. This becomes cleaned, cleaned. Then we have pull, pull. This becomes pulled, pulled. The reason we have these rules is because it's much easier for your mouth and your tongue to produce 2 of the same sounds next to each other. Let's take the word love, for example. Love British English, okay? Love. When we add ed to the end of it, it becomes loved. 2 voiced sounds together. Vd, vd, loved, okay? But what happens when we switch that d sound to a voiceless t sound? Let's try that. Loved, loved. Okay, I really have to think about that. It's much, much harder for my mouth and my tongue to produce two different sounds, okay? I mean, one voiced and one voiceless. All of the voiced sounds are followed by a voiced sound, and all of the voiceless sounds are followed by a voiceless sound. Do you remember in the previous two rules I mentioned except T and D? Well, the reason I say this is because when a word ends in a t sound or a d sound, we change the ed to id. So we add an extra syllable. So the word want becomes wanted, and the word need becomes needed. Wanted, needed. Here are some more examples. Start becomes started, started. Visit becomes visited, visited. And end becomes ended, ended. Now that I've explained the three rules of the ending ed sound, let's test your knowledge. I'm going to give you a couple of sentences and all you have to do is tell me how to pronounce the ed ending of these verbs. So, number one, when I was a university student, I to work part-time as a sales assistant. When I was a university student, I used to work part-time as a sales assistant. Used. Okay, we have a d sound here. But when used is followed by to, often that D is silent, okay? And we connect the two words together. So it sounds more like used to, used to. I used to work part-time as a sales assistant. Number two, and when I was 21, I, as a carer in a nursing home. And when I was 21, I worked as a carer in a nursing home. Worked, worked. Number three, we are friends round for dinner this weekend. We invited our friends round for dinner this weekend. Invited, invited. Number four, I to the park yesterday. I walked to the park yesterday. Walked. Next, I the house all afternoon. I cleaned the house all afternoon. Cleaned. And lastly, my husband and I to Greece this summer. My husband and I travelled to Greece this summer. Travelled. Well done, everyone. I really hope you got all of them correct. If you're not sure still by the end of this lesson, go back and check the rules again. All you have to do is keep practicing and it will become second nature to you. But for now, enjoy the rest of your day and I'll see you soon. Bye.